Hey everybody, Don Humphrey again here with P&R Communications, and back here with more of our continuation of tech tips. But actually today's not so much of a tech tip as it is an explainer. So today I want to talk about P25 radio authentication. Now, P25 radio authentication has been a hot button topic for the state of Ohio Marks radio system and also the Lucas County radio system up here in Northwest Ohio, where I am based. And there's been a lot of confusion. So a lot of people have a lot of information just passed from agency to agency. Some people think they're okay. Some people understand that they're not. They need to have some action done on their radios. So my video today is primarily focused on explaining to you exactly what P25 radio authentication is, what you need to do for your agency to make sure that after July 1st, 2025, your radios will continue to work on the radio system. Now, I'm going to be talking about how the process is done. We're going to be talking about some of your radios may need to have a license added with one of these guys here, one of these little license dongles to add a license to a radio. We're going to talk a little bit about the KVL or a key variable loader. And this KVL is what we use to inject a encrypted secret key into the radios. And we'll talk about why. And basically this and this together with the appropriate licensing is going to get your radios up and running and continue to run after July 1, 2025 on the state of Ohio radio system and on the Northwest Ohio Lucas County radio system. So I've got a little bit of a PowerPoint that I'm going to share with you here. And let's just jump right into it. So what is P25 radio authentication? So P25 radio authentication is the next level of taking the radio system to a secure place. So you may have heard P25 radio authentication referred to by a couple different names, link layer authentication, or sometimes we just call it link layer. So, but it's all the same thing. P25 radio authentication and link layer, they're exactly the same thing. Okay, and basically it's just a method of 2FA or two-factor authentication. All of us in this day and age with smartphones and digital online accounts, we all understand what two-factor authentication is. That's when you log in to a website and they say, no, before I let you in all the way, I'm going to send you a text message to your phone, and then you tell me what that number is, and then I'll let you in. P25 radio authentication is basically just a two-factor authentication platform. So it's going to protect the radio system against cloned and illegal radios. So it's not an easy process to clone a radio and use it illegally on the state of Ohio radio system or on the Lucas County radio system, but it's not impossible, and with some sophisticated hacking tools, it can be done. So what we want to do is preserve those system resources, because resources are finite. There's only so many channels on each tower that allow us to talk within our agency to other agencies on these radio systems. And if we have bad actors out there with cloned radios, they're taking up those resources when we need those resources to get those emergency comms going in the field. So it prevents disruption of critical communication. So a cloned radio on your agency's primary talk group, have somebody just keying up and talking on the system and tying up your channel is going to create some havoc for you. And it's based on a zero trust architecture, or ZTA. Zero trust architecture at its core is just that no person or no device by themselves are trusted in this network. So we are adding a second layer of authentication in order to make sure that that device is capable of using resources on the system. Here's a big one. This is not optional, ladies and gentlemen. It's not optional. It is mandatory for all Marks and Lucas County radios. So if you're using the Mark system, or you're using the Lucas County radio system, or if you're using both of those radio systems, P25 radio authentication is mandatory. They're flipping the switch to make all radios have to do this two-factor handshake that we're going to demonstrate here in a second. July 1st, 2025. After that point, if your radios have not been authenticated on the system, they're going to stop working. So very important. Now, there are some XTS, XTLs out there that may have had that license way back in the day, but on the state of Ohio radio system and on the Lucas County radio system, you can no longer buy licenses for those radios. The XTS, XTL is a discontinued radio platform. So everything that we're talking about today are talking about Apex or Apex Next or NXT type radios. Okay, so there's the deadlines for you. Same deadline for both radio systems. Both, so your radios must be authenticated on both of those systems if you use both, or just on one or the other if you're just a single system user, prior to July 1, 2025. Now, I don't know if any of you went through narrowbanding back in 2013 when everybody had to take their old analog radio licenses and narrowband them. A lot of customers waited up till the very last minute, till the 11th hour, and had trouble getting any radio company, period, come out and get the work done for them in order to narrowband their radio fleets. Let's not let this happen with P25 radio authentication. The time to act is really right now. I mean, you should have this in motion already. If you don't, you need to get on the phone as soon as you're done watching this video. Contact PNR's public safety specialist and get this ball rolling. So how does the system run today? So currently without P25 radio authentication, there's my radio system. I know you love my artwork. And we've got Officer Don over here turning on his radio. And his radio is transmitting to the system as soon as he turns it on and says, hey, I'm radio 12345. And that ID, and that ID alone is what is authenticating that radio on the radio system today. So as long as I turn my radio on, it tells the system I'm radio 12345. The radio system checks its information and says, oh yeah, I know radio 12345. You're good to go. Go ahead and talk. So that's kind of the way it works today. So, but over here, we've got a bad guy with a radio. And he says, no, I'm Officer Don. I've got radio 12345. The system just sees radio 12345, says, oh, okay, yeah, you're good. Yep, you're good too. Yep, you're good. All right, so it sees just that radio ID getting exchanged with the system, and it's granting access to the system based on that ID. Now, this isn't something that just any person with a laptop and a cable can accomplish in order to clone these radios. There are security features in there to prevent people from programming there. But like I said, with the right hacking software and some time on your hands, it's possible to clone a radio on the system. And in fact, back in 2018, Stark County Sheriff's Office with Canton Police Department did raids of several locations where they found cloned radios that were on the Marks state of Ohio Marks radio system, and those radios were being used for nefarious purposes. So I think at least 5 or 6 people ended up getting arrested, and basically it was identified by the system, by the Marks radio system personnel that just saw odd things with radios. Radio IDs registering to different towers and multiple at the same time, multiple different towers at the same time. They flagged it, which is what initiated that investigation. And needless to say, they did catch them. But how do we prevent this from happening in the future? So once we turn on that radio authentication in the system, there's our system. Officer Dunn turns on his radio again. First part of the process, identical as the way it is today. Says, hey, I'm radio 12345. But now the system asks a question. Do you have a key? and it sends that back to the radio, and the radio has to produce that key. Now, that key is an encrypted 128-bit AES key that's stored in the radio. It's also stored at the radio system level. And if that radio ID, 12345, and that key, which is unique to that radio, if those two things do not match moving forward, system says, no, you have no access to my system. I don't believe that you are who you say you are, and you're not going to be able to talk. So now our bad guy powers up his cloned radio. Do you have a key? Nope. Does this guy have a key? No, he does not. So over and over again, all these cloned radios, no key, no access. So you can see how much this is going to enhance the security of the radio system. So it gives you peace of mind knowing that we don't have cloned radios out there tying up your air or tying up those precious finite resources that we have at each one of the radio towers across the state of Ohio. So, and this is just basically Motorola's representation of this process. So first part, I turn my radio on, I send a registration request to the system. System gives me a challenge. Halt, who goes there? Well, hey, I'm Officer Dunn, radio 12345. And here's my key. Once I have the key, the system sends back that message to my radio and says, good to go ahead and talk. It's basically all this is. The two-factor authentication, unlike what you use on websites or maybe on your banking app on your smartphone, to where you have to do some extra step every time you do that. This is done for you. It's seamless. Once that key is injected into the radio and shared with the radio system, it checks that key every single time. And so you're not sitting there having to hit any additional buttons on your radio for this two-factor authentication to flow. Okay, so you need a couple of things. So first of all, we need to know if your radio actually has a license in order to have a key injected into it. So the license that your radio needs to have is called P25 radio authentication. Motorola radios, much like a lot of things in our lives these days, come with 3 million capabilities, but we only pay for those capabilities that we need. So if you have older Apex radios that were purchased before we started making sure that every radio had P25 radio authentication, they may need to have a license added to the radio or just a license unlocked in the radio so that it can accept that encrypted key. So that's why it's critical to contact us today, get that appointment set up so that we can start evaluating the radios in your fleet to see if they need a key first. Because that key, that license key is something that has to be ordered from Motorola. We're seeing lead times maybe 4 to 12 weeks out from the time that you order them to the time that you receive them. So once we have the license in the radio, we then have to touch it with that KVL that I showed you at the beginning of the video. And this KVL is what's going to generate that random 128-bit AES encrypted key. It's going to inject that into the radio. And then we're also going to then upload that key to the authentication center or the authentication server at the state of Ohio or the Lucas County radio system so that the key in your radio, the key in the system, they have to be an exact match in order for your radio to be given access to the radio system. This is all a secure process. These are all random keys that are generated. The technicians that are performing this work on your radios will not know what those keys are. We're just hitting a button on the device that is generating that random key. It's securely uploading that to your radio. Then once we return from the day of programming at your location, we take those keys and then we upload them securely to the state of Ohio or to Lucas County. And those keys from end to end, it's all encrypted and nobody is going to know what that key is. So we do have some caveats with this. So if you have a radio and it has to get a new ID for whatever reason, it's going to need to have a new key injected in it and then shared with the radio system. If it has major repairs to where they're swapping boards out because a radio had to be fixed at the factory, it may need to have a new key injected back into it and then shared with the radio system. So just keep that in mind. We have the process already in place at P&R Communications that now the P25 radio authentication is here, is that radios coming back from a repair from Motorola that had to get factory service, we're automatically checking those. If they've been authenticated before, we're going to go ahead and load those at that time before we ship those back to you to make sure that they'll continue to talk. So the steps you need to take now to ensure compliance. So like I said, contact a P&R public safety specialist. Let's evaluate your radio fleet to see if you're prepared for your radios to be authenticated. Now, if you just bought all your radios last year and they already have the P25 license, radio authentication license in them, all we need to do is schedule time for our technicians to come out with the KVL device, load those keys into your radio, upload those to the state of Ohio, and then you're done. But if you have older radios that do not have that license active, then we need to create an order with Motorola. We need to order those licenses and then flash upgrade your radios with that new license, and before we can hit it with the KVL and put that authentication key in it. So like I said, lead times could be 4 to 12 weeks to receive these licenses. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of radios in the state of Ohio that have yet to be authenticated on the system. Everybody is going to start feeling the crunch as we near July 2025. Get your orders in today, folks. I can't stress that enough. Don't wait till the last minute because just like a radio system has finite resources, P&R Communications or any other radio shop for that matter has finite resources. There's only so many radio technicians out there to come on site and perform the work for you. Let's get you on the schedule now. Let's get a path forward so that you're not caught at the last minute hoping that you can get somebody out to your facility or to your agency to do this work. Like I said, even if you already have the license in your radio, we still have to touch it and load the radio with a key. And we have to load a key for Marks, and if you use both Marks and Lucas County, we have to load a key for each separate system, and then we upload those keys separately to those two radio systems. So there we have it. That's basically P25 radio authentication in a nutshell. Key takeaway is, if you don't know, let's find out. Contact the public safety specialist here at P&R today. Let's get somebody looking at your radios, evaluating those radios to see exactly what steps you need to take next to get this done. And let's get it done as early as possible, because if you wait to the last minute, you know a lot of people will, and we may not have the staff to get to you when you want that programming done. So if we start scheduling that now, we know when to be in place to make this transition happen for you. Again, if you have any questions, we're going to include some documentation in the comments, some links to the contact information for our public safety specialist, some information on the Marks and Lucas County radio systems. And as always, if you have any questions whatsoever, go to our website and reach out to us. It's p&rcommunications.com. And I hope to talk to you soon. Thanks.